hostile interactions at the residence. Now, we expect that new witnesses will be taking the stand at 9:30 a.m. this morning. Of course, we have no knowledge as to who the
Morning, Tonzi.
Good morning, Mr. Dot.
Morning.
I'm fine, and yourself?
I'm good with you. Yes.
Work this particular moment, and I suppose the difficulty for the Matriculants writing today momentum going.
I'm good beside the flu. And like hot here in Cape Town. Hey, ufethwe flu kabi.
Untitled. Untitled.
Ndiyakhatha. Ndiyakhatha.
Good morning. Today, it was forwarded by writing Marine Sciences paper 2. This is the last being quite a journey to prepare for this paper. It's better than the usual paper.
Okay, all right. So,
okay.
So,
Marine Sciences that I'm writing today.
I saw them. Unfortunately, we could not engage with them further because they were preparing. She has given them instructions on how to prepare for this last examination paper. What are we expecting?
We're expecting 100%, especially for them. They have been performing 100% from term 1. And even in the last term 3, the trial exams, which are actually the one that shows us how they're going to perform. So they performed at 100%. But as a school, we had targeted 100% pass, and we see it is going to be possible.
Now let's talk about the uniform behind me. I see that you are donating this uniform to
our partners came here with the
Vice Chairperson, good morning. Is it you with iPad?
That's me, Secretary. Thank you and good morning.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. I'll change it.
Recording in progress.
A very good morning to the honorable members of Parliament that serve in this committee, Portfolio Committee of Small Business Development. I see the members are on the call. And good morning to our colleagues, our secretariat, and our visitor for today. I did not get their names, but let me welcome them. Immediately we are being told as to who is our visitors for today. We will do the presentation and end up capacitating the members of the Portfolio Committee, then we'll then recognize them as such secretary. Allow me to say the meeting is officially open and I have welcomed everybody. And the purpose of this meeting is to continue to receive information that will then end up assisting the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, especially when they will be doing their oversight visit and in their different study groups. Then we'll be able to have knowledge of what is it that we must talk about and what is it that we must deal with, what is it that we need to concentrate on. So that is the purpose of this meeting. If I can request the secretary to take us to the second item that deals with apologies. Over to you, Secretary. Undertaking.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Yes.
Good morning, honorable members that are on the platform. Good morning, our visitors. I'll indicate to the Chairperson, to the leaders of these two groups, and then when they are presenting, they can explain the delegation. However, Chairperson, we have received the apologies of both ministers, as we know, though it was just a meeting for the Portfolio Committee, but for the mere fact that they honor and respect the Portfolio Committee, they extended their apologies while the minister is with a seat in the cabinet meeting and the deputy minister is held up somewhere. And then on the side of the honorable members that extended their apologies, those that I received is for Honorable Sapo. However, she indicated that she will be in the meeting, but she will request to be excused at 10:30 because she has to honor a doctor's appointment. So those are the apologies that I have received. And before I finish, Chair, there's that standing apology for Honorable Powell and for Honorable Inkosi Ulutuli. However, he does follow, because he puts the recordings, he does follow the meetings when where he is. So those are the apologies, Chairperson, that I have received. Then secondly, on the side of the visitors, we've got a Bureau of Market Research, which I believe it is led by Dr. Waite, if I'm pronouncing his surname properly. It's Dr. Waite. And then on the side of the CSC advisory, we are having Mr. Charles Kermel, who is leading that delegation. I should think when they are presenting, they will explain, or they will also introduce the delegation. However, there's also Professor Paul Kibuka. So those are the visitors and the members that they've indicated, Chair. And lastly, I'll just indicate to the Chairperson that must remember that she'll have been a Chairperson's meeting at 1 o'clock. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Secretary. And thanks for the members who forwarded their apology. We welcome the apology of the ministers, apology of Honorable Sapo, and the standing apology of Honorable Powell and Kusili Tuli. I don't know if ever you forgot Honorable Vilankulu. I don't think I've seen her on the list of the participant unless if she's still trying to log in. Allow me, members of the Portfolio Committee, to welcome Dr. I don't know, is Vet? You said Vet or Dr. Witt, something of that nature.
Wait.
Dr. Witt.
Wait.
Wait.
W-A-I-T. Wait, like OM something, yeah.
All right, it's fine. I think if ever we are not pronouncing it correctly, whenever it's time for him to do the presentation, he'll then assist us with the correct pronunciation. I also want to welcome Mr. Charles Kamer and Professor Paul in our meeting. Thank you very much. We are now on. Did you forget Honorable Lankulu, or is she still trying to log in? I didn't hear you talking about her.
I think she's still trying to log in, Chair, because she didn't send anything.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now on the next item that deals with consideration and adoption of the meeting agenda. Over to the members on this item. The Honorable Member Kruka.
Thank you, ma'am, and good morning to all the colleagues and the presentations on this platform. Yes, ma'am, I want to propose or move that we accept the agenda as presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Malimacha, I see your answer.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also follow suit. Take this opportunity to greet you, visitors, members of Parliament, and everybody on the platform. Of more importance, the presenters, when joining Mr. Kuruka to support the move to adopt this agenda as it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Then that gives us an opportunity now to welcome our presenters. We are going to start with a briefing by the Bureau of Market Research on the findings of the Small Business Growth Index. And then, I don't know, members will assist me. I see after the presentation, there's questions and engagement. And then thereafter, it will be briefing by the principal of the CSC advisory on catalyzing MSME development in South Africa. And then we have questions and engagement. I don't know whether we will listen to both questions and then engage thereafter, or are we going to treat each and every presentation as it is on the program? I need an advice, honorable members. Secretary, you may, okay, I see the hand of Honorable Sarah Singh and the hand of Honorable Malimacha. Honorable Sarah, you'll be the first one.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to you and to the presenters and all the officials and colleagues on the platform. Chair, I think there are two quite distinct presentations by different groupings of professionals in the industry. And I do think that we should have the questions and engagements after each presentation, Chair. Thank you. That is my proposal.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. Honorable Malimacha.
Thank you. I think she has nailed it on the head. These are two different institutions. Obviously, each will want to have its own time and deal with its own matter without being involved in another institution. I think that is more professional than any other thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We are going to listen to the presentations as they appear on the program. And the honorable members should notice that our today program is very short. 1 o'clock, there is another meeting, and thereafter is plenary. So I'm going to request the content advisors to stick to 3 minutes whenever the honorable members will be engaging the presentations. Thank you very much. We are in the hands of the Bureau of Market Research, which is going to be presented by Dr. Wade. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I'll just share my screen for the presentation. Just a moment, apologies. Colleagues, while I'm sharing, to give you an overview of the Small Business Growth Index, it is a national partnership between ABSA, SACCI, and the Bureau of Market Research at UNISA, and its purpose is to provide South Africa with a credible, real-time barometer of the health and resilience and growth prospects of small business sector. So I think it'll be very insightful for today's discussion in terms of the key findings. Small enterprises account for more than 90% of all small businesses in South Africa, yet many of them operate under intensifying pressures of cost, inflation, infrastructure instability, constrained access to finance. And to capture this and their lived realities, we surveyed 1,601 small business owners and managers across all 9 provinces using a robust and nationally representative approach. So today's presentation brings their collective voice, highlighting the pressures they face, the resilience they continue to show, and the policy interventions they believe would make the most meaningful difference. I will just, again, apologies, colleagues, try to share my screen. I'm having an issue here today.
Chairperson, from my side, I can see the screen is shared, I think.
Even from my side.
Is that showing for everyone?
At least it's, now we are fine.
Perfect. Apologies for that delay, colleagues. So for our presentation, we will cover 3 areas. Firstly, the Small Business Growth Index, giving you a background and touching on the methodology. Then we'll touch on the top 8 findings. There are 2 reports that we've done. So this initiative was launched at the start of this year. We did a survey for the first half of the year. That has been published, and that is the focus of today's presentation. Then we've done a second survey for the second half of the year, and that will be published in early December for noting. I can also share a copy of the first report with everyone after today's session as well. And then we will touch on tips for small businesses. So we've identified key issues in this report. We'll highlight the top 8 findings, and then we'll touch on some of the tips that we share with businesses by emanating from the report itself. So to give you a background, I've touched on the initiative, that it's a collaborative initiative. Its purpose is to be an indicator, a credible indicator of small business growth and development. It measures perceptions of small businesses across 8 performance metrics. It captures the voice of small businesses, and it aims to foster interventions and to provide evidence-based insights for policymaking. The research team applied a random purposive sampling method followed by a quantitative self-administered online survey. That was during April and May of this year. It captures a snapshot of small business conditions during the first half of the year. So that's the context of these results. The target population importantly comprises small business entities employing between 1 and 50 employees. In collaboration with over a dozen support agencies from both public and private sector, the team assembled a sampling frame that incorporates diverse small business registers. And with that, we reached the substantial sample of 1,601 small business owners and managers. Honourable members, then turning to the top findings from the first half-year study, there are 8 key findings that emanated from the report. Firstly, over half of small businesses are in decline or distress. So that is rather concerning, that businesses do face challenges. Cost pressures are severe and widespread across specific cost elements. But however, small business resilience is vulnerable but stabilizing. So within that, small businesses show a lot of resilience. Over half of the small businesses may not survive another year without support based on their own indication in the online survey. Skills gaps are another crucial area, with many of the small businesses rating themselves relatively low in terms of their skills in key areas. Then broader issues such as capital, competition and access to capital are some of the biggest challenges that they've indicated they face. Then they flagged reducing VAT and easing bureaucracy and improving access to finance as some of the key requirements where they need government intervention and support. And then on the positive side, optimism exists, but 1 in 4 businesses face serious challenges. So there are challenges, but businesses are resilient, and we'll delve deeper into those key results. One of the key areas we look at is around recent performance and operations metrics. You'll see 52.8% of small businesses report being in a state of contraction or difficulty. So that is concerning. Only 25.5% reported any form of growth. So over half of small businesses are in decline or distress. So that is a concerning area highlighted from the findings based on the reporting by the small businesses. Cost of doing business, as I've mentioned, certain key areas show rising costs, especially transport, utilities, raw materials and financing costs. So those are the areas where they face high cost pressures. 75% of businesses plan to raise prices within the next 6 months as a result of that cost pressure. So this inflationary environment has really eroded profitability, eating into margins, leaving firms really cash strapped and impacting cash flow. So that is a concern for small businesses. In terms of survival, support and needs, what businesses need, overall, the SBGI index score ranges from 0 to 100, where 0 displays extremely poor growth prospects and business conditions, while the score closer to 100 displays high economic growth prospects. So this is our barometer in terms of scoring businesses. So in the report, you will see there are various responses on the key areas identified in the report, and that is then pulled together into the index to give us a sense of where small businesses are. And the national SBGI score for this first half-year report was 51.08 points out of 100. So that indicates a state of vulnerability, a vulnerable state, where South Africa's SMME sector is really not in a crisis, but these businesses are exposed in terms of the challenges that they face. However, the outlook seems to be improving, with more firms expecting stability in the year ahead. So the key message there is there is a high sense of vulnerability, but that is hopefully stabilizing. In terms of, again, survival and support needs, what do small businesses indicate? 33.9% or 1 in 3 businesses say that they can only survive for 0 to 6 months. Then 55.3% say they can only survive for another 12 months. 75% concede immediate policy intervention is necessary to ensure continuity. So that really highlights the sense from businesses that they need support, especially these businesses that are facing these difficulties. With that, then skills and knowledge development needs is another key area identified, where we asked respondents to self-assess their skills levels. And here are some examples where cybersecurity, digital management, supply chain, and export readiness, if you look at the percentage of respondents that said they rank themselves as good or sufficiently skilled in these areas are very, very low. You'll see the 9.1, 12.2, and 20% respectively. 44.3 are uncertain where to access the right skills development, highlighting the need for better support ecosystems and making sense of what are the opportunities there. Nearly 1 in 2 small businesses lack clarity of where to find that appropriate training. So I think there's a lot of options out there, but small businesses don't always know where to start, and they may feel overwhelmed in terms of where to start and where to go for support. Finance is another key issue, honourable members. Inadequate capital, increased competition, and limited access to finance. Those are the top 3 finance business challenges highlighted by small businesses in the report and from the research. So 100% of businesses cited a lack of capital as the most significant obstacle. Then close to 70% report growing pressure from both formal and informal competitors. So there's increased competition, making the environment more challenging, and then of course the limited access to finance, and the processes and the paperwork and the requirements are often cited as some of the issues in terms of getting access to finance. Then utilization of support and advice providers. Businesses highlighted that some key interventions are required. Easier access, obviously, previous points, easier access to affordable finance and grants. So that's one point, reducing bureaucracy and cutting red tape. That is another challenge tied with the cost of doing business. And then reducing VAT is cited as another mechanism. And again, those percentages are the proportion of respondents that cited these as areas where they need assistance and that could help there. So those are the 3 most important interventions based on survey responses where government could assist these businesses. Then business planning and forward-looking sentiment within the small business ecosystem. There is optimism, as I mentioned at the start, but 1 in 4 businesses face serious challenges. 24.6% expect growth, 38.1% expect to remain stable, and then the rest there, 37.4% expect contraction. So to highlight the top concerns, again, looking forward into the future from the report and the study, the increased cost of goods, increased staff wages, power interruptions, and then price increases, economic climate and energy costs, and then staff layoffs were of lowest concern, but still significant. Again, those percentages in terms of respondents highlighting those. So those are the key areas on the radar of small businesses. So with that, honourable members, those are the key 8 areas of findings from the report. But subsequent to publishing the report, based on the areas and the issues highlighted by small businesses, we compiled small tips for small businesses in an initiative we call the Small Tips for Small Business, where we address some of the key issues highlighted by small businesses, and that was a follow-on application, and that was distributed to those who participated in the project and in the survey, and then that was also distributed through online through SACI's website. And I will just briefly highlight some of those tips that were shared, and it was in this format around what is the insight from the report. And cash flow was a key issue for many small businesses. And for example, many SMEs only review their finances at month end, and then it's often to act on shortfalls. And then we've proposed some actions that businesses can consider. For example, creating a 13-week forecast, tracking inflows and outflows on a weekly, more regular basis, using a spreadsheet or 3 tool. And then there's a quick win for small businesses. For example, dedicating 30 minutes every Friday to review next week's cash position. So this is a further attempt then to support small businesses with these tips based on the key findings. So I'll just page through these. As I mentioned, the first one here as an example was cash flow. Then funding sources, We give some points around how businesses can try and diversify their funding sources for their business. Then establishing or upgrading an online storefront. So online sales and online retail was identified as an area where there's opportunity for growth in sales. So this is quite an important point. And having that online presence, especially in the context of November and all the sales that take place within this month and the festive season, being able to support online commerce is very valuable for small businesses. Then also using data to understand customers, having that better insight to make informed decisions, prioritizing practical skills, as I mentioned, in key areas. Self-assessment in terms of skills levels are relatively low, so that is important. And again, here I think the issue is for small businesses to identify where to go and where to start in terms of upskilling, where they might feel overwhelmed. Then learning collaboratively, joining up with industry bodies or industry meetings, the local ecosystem similarly. I won't go through all of them. Those are contained in the slides that were shared. Negotiating with suppliers is another one, and rethinking pricing strategy. So that is to give a flavor of the types of tips that were shared, emanating from the challenges highlighted in the report. Chairperson, honourable members, thank you so much. We can open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Dr. Wade. Honourable members.
Chairperson?
Yes.
Apologies. I see the hand of Professor Paul Kibuka.
Okay.
He's part of the team. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Content Advisor. Honorable Kruger, let's allow Professor to say something before the members ask questions. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, honorable members. Chair, just to take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution that was made by Minister Ndabeni in the workshop that was held at the beginning of this project, where the minister gave us inputs on the 8 pillars of the SBGI, as indicated by Dr. Wade, in addition to giving inputs on the components of the entire SBGI framework, as you have seen it. Chair, based on the discussions of that workshop, we have been able to develop partnerships as BMR at UNISA, which has resulted in memorandums of understanding with the Department of Small Business Development, but also with the SEDFA. But more importantly, Chair, we were also able, using those inputs, to determine the factors that highlight the value and uniqueness of this index compared to others that are available in the market. And firstly, Chair, using those inputs, we're able to determine that the SBGI is being populated by small business survey inputs, providing a business voice instead of being populated by national accounts and other comparable data as we see for other indices in the market. And secondly, Chair, that the SBGI study is being conducted by business itself in terms of ABSA, as well as organized business in terms of SACI, the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in addition to the support that is being provided by the Bureau of Market Research at UNISA. And also, importantly, Chair, we're able to confirm that the SBGI study is not primarily being produced for academic research purposes, but rather for intervention purposes, which will be led by yourselves as the Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development, but also the department in itself, providing lead on small business policy and support in terms of implementation. And lastly, Chair, we're also able to confirm that the SBGI is not a once-off small business research project, but rather a biannual action research project. And as Dr. Waite did indicate, this is the first report this year, and the next report is being launched in the next month at the beginning of December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I saw the hand of Honorable Kruger earlier on. Maybe I should allow you to take a first bite, and then I'll be noting the other hands. Over to you, Dr. Kruger.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for a very interesting and short presentation. So I hope we send this short presentation to the DG and the department so that they can see how powerful a short presentation can be. But that is just tongue in my Guatemala. It's just a joke. So, Chairperson, yes, thank you for the presentations. I enjoy it. Although it's information now we can put percentages behind the knowledge that we already know. I mean, we know what is the stress factors of small businesses in South Africa. So the first question I want to ask is if they can send us the distributed tips, if it's in a document format, to all of us, or if, and so that we can also, when the reports come out in the future and there's more tips, so that we will be on the distribution list, if it's possible. Madam Chair, and then the question I want to ask the presenter, Dr. White, is that will the new business license bill is the doing business for MSMEs? Because we can see small businesses are highly in a stress mode, and most of them don't think they're going to make the end of the year or doing business for more than a year. So the question is, will the business license bill don't add to the stressful factors and bottlenecks? And what are they suggesting we would do about small businesses and spaza shops and those that don't play the game legally? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kruger. Honorable Singh, you're the second one.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you to the presenter. That was an informative piece of information that was imparted. Chair, like the Honorable Kruger said, I think a lot of this was already known by us, and that is why we have been pushing for certain reforms in terms of what government is doing. However, seeing certain percentages and seeing it, as evidence-based information that's coming through to us, I think the question now we need to ask ourselves is, what is government going to do about this? And we need to seriously relook at government initiatives and programs, because it's not yielding the impact we want to see, and which is of a thriving MSME sector, which can create the jobs that is desperately needed in the country. We have invested billions of rands into the MSME sector, and a large number of the small and micro businesses that we've invested in have actually either closed down or remain in survival mode, as we've seen on a number of oversight visits by this committee and by visits that we've undertaken personally to meet with these business people. So there's something that needs to happen when these government programs are designed, and it has to be a complete suite of support that is provided to these businesses, both financial and non-financial. We've seen too many businesses where money has been given and then the skills have not been there, or money has been given for part of the business operations, and then the person actually can't complete their products, get it to market, for the lack of access to markets. So it has to be based on viable business plans. And if that plan is viable, we've got to fund the plan completely and hold the person's hand all the way till the end, till they are viable. Otherwise, it's money going down the drain. What I would actually like to ask the presenters is that when they conducted the study, what feedback did they get? I know they've indicated that the cost of labor and other input costs were very high. In my own interactions with business, a huge number of people who can open factories like clothing factories where a lot of people with no skills can be employed and can be trained on the job, and large numbers of employment opportunities can be created. They cannot conform with the current labor regulations and the bargaining agreements that are automatically extended to them. They just cannot simply afford it. So I'd like to know if the study got any information on this. The second thing is that we tend to see that supplier development programs by corporates tend to be a lot more sustainable because I think of the continued support that they get throughout the process, as well as the businesses who have been assisted as startups under the EEI schemes, where those businesses are actually doing pretty well. A lot of them, they are viable, they're successful, they are employing people, and more importantly, they do not now need further assistance because they can actually run the business as it is proving to be viable, and they're getting clients outside the business sector. So the fact that some of those programs and the uptake of people that they are skilling is much higher, has there been any differentiation when the study was undertaken to find out exactly which programs, if any, that these businesses were helped by? For example, under EEI or supplier development by larger corporates in terms of their BEE regulations, or whether they've just been straight from, for example, organizations like our entity like SETFA. So that would be interesting. And I think there should be a differentiation because you'll then see what works on the ground and what's not working. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Malimacha, over to you.
No, thank you, Chair. Let me also follow suit in welcoming the presentation. Short, sweet, straightforward. From the presenters, I want to further align myself with the previous speakers who are saying many things mentioned here we are quite aware of, and you have put them in a way that they must be acknowledged that they are there. Equally, the tips that we are putting on the ground, you are saying these are the things that can assist. Now, there is this legendary reggae revolutionarist activist by rights, who, when he was dealing with the pain of a poor man, he said, and I quote, "Who knows it feels bad?" You see, these people we are talking about, many of us, we never even attempt to be in that field. And it is them who really feels the pain of being in that sector. And in many cases, we are very fast to identify things that are not necessarily helping them. Instead, are problem to them. But we don't have this in full force to say, how do we deal with the issue that if, for an example, we identify as lack of capacity, then, but we will point out and say they lack capacity. We will point out that their pricing strategy is not correct. We will point out that they cannot sustain their business. Lastly, to include that they don't have a strategy to find themselves in a global market. They are crying to everyone to say, capacitate us. By capacitating us in saying, don't tell me what I lack. Show me how to achieve this, so that at the end of the day, when it comes, I'm no longer going to be referred as a person who is unskilled in this business. You know, we are dealing with a very difficult sector that many people want to take a chance of some sort. Let me give an example of a spaza shop. It's easy to camouflage the whole township and say we got funds, we are opening spaza shop. Spaza shop, when coming to operation, is like checkers, it's like pick and pay. It's like anything, where a cent, every cent matters. You miss 1 cent, you have tampered with your profit, and if you continue, you have tampered with the budget of the particular operation, and if you continue, you shut down. You can see one or another, it requires a skill of some sort, well-trained mean of some sort, so that you master that. I'm giving that as a preamble to this when I welcome this and say, the report is fine, but at the very same time, we will need more researchers that they've got more practical solution to these people, so that at the end of the day, we don't find ourselves very outsmarting the very same people who have nothing. You see, the chair, for an example, the 100% business, it has identified the issue of capacity as a constraint. And you go further, the issue of competition in a form of 55.2%. That deals with the issue of the barriers. Okay? So this, it adds up, Chair. But however, I think I have made the point I wanted to make when welcoming the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Malumacha. I see the hand of Honorable Webster. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I think Honorable Malumacha raises something very, very critical. My own life before was in enterprise development and in economic development, engaging and working with numerous agencies and even the private sector, and working with the CIDFAs, now CIDFAs, it was CIDA then, the IDCs, NEFs, the various government agencies that exist. And one of the observations and insights that were the most consistent and the most problematic was what you raised, Honorable Malumacha, in saying that the people who are in the departments, who are in the government agencies, particularly in the department, don't always have the background and context in enterprise development. And that, I think, is key. When you look at other agencies, I'll make an example of the Raise Corps, because I have done some work with them for a while. One of the criteria of anybody who worked at Raise Corp was that they had themselves either been an entrepreneur and owned a small business, or they had worked in the industry. And I think until we start to get that right, because what happens in government departments is that we import people from various other departments and just from the government ecosystem into a department like the Department of Small Business Development, and they genuinely don't understand. They don't understand the challenges. They don't understand the nuances that happen within that industry. So I think that's something important to note. And I think it's something we need to consider, even as a committee, engaging with the department to say, how can going forward, and perhaps even in the long term, when you look at the strategic development of the department, when you look at the plans of the department, that starts to be something that's incorporated as important for small business. There are references where in other countries this has been done. There are case studies where it has been done, and it does improve output. It does improve the impact and relevance of the department. So I just wanted to first piggyback on that point by Ono Malemacha and say that actually it's something we need to be taking serious, because it does create a difference. And then the second is a question to Dr. Wade, to say that based on your funding, I mean, your data shows that 100% of SMMEs identify inadequate capital as their biggest constraint. And so are you able to maybe quite directly outline what elements of the current government funding architecture are actually misaligned with the SME realities, as we speak about MSMEs and their realities often not being met? What are the elements of current government funding which are misaligned? I know you mentioned a few, but I think it would be good to have that directly, because what I've often raised here in this committee, and what is it's really, and other colleagues as well, it is really a serious issue for us, is commercial criteria when it comes to MSMEs. When government funding or government instruments of funding have the exact same commercial criteria as you'd find in a bank, and you often find that doesn't work, and it's not the mechanism that we should be using to assess the viability of a business. And so I wonder if there are others which are misalignments to SME realities. You also mentioned in the report that 33.9% of SMMEs can only survive 0 to 6 months, and 55.3% less than a year without support. So what type of financial instruments, if you look at grants, working capital lines, which of those instruments would actually most effectively respond to that short survival horizon? In that short period, which are the instruments that you believe are most needed? Because maybe then that needs to be part of the focus, and that also speaks to how funding is resourced within departments and within agencies, and what is actually becoming priority. Because if it's about survival, if we find that the weight of the challenges in survival, perhaps then we should be resourcing better for that key first startup phase, and making sure that that's resourced better. And then my last question is about market access. And I think that I personally, research aside, don't believe that there is enough partnership between the private sector and government when it comes to market access. And so I'm wondering if you, based on these insights, would be able to propose the kind of models of public-private partnerships which would create the strongest market access opportunities, because the problem, even that you report, is increased competition from better resourced formal players. So how then can government play a role in one, better resourcing, but then have the partnership with the private sector to enable that, to ensure that the opportunities actually there, and maybe it's even ring-fenced for some programs, for some SMMEs that come from programs of government. I think that would be the last, because I think that really is what then would help in ensuring two very important areas, which one is financing and one is market access. We know this, as the colleagues have said, but it comes out strongly in your report as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Honorable Webster. I don't see any other hand. I did not hear a shout. Okay, I see a WhatsApp message from the Honorable Matulela.
Okay.
Member Matulela, over to you, ma.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a chat here in the Zoom. At WhatsApp.
I've been trying to check and I did not see it, but I'm happy that you ended up talking to us through the chat. You may take the space now.
Okay, once I must greet you, Chairperson, and also our presenters as well as honorable members and everyone else. Thank you very much, Chairperson. We have had the presentation, but also we've got the questions that are going straight to our presenters, because also whatever they've presented before us, it shows a lot of it raises a lot of eyebrows to say we need to know about their stance and what are they suggesting out of what they've been presenting here, because they confirm that the small business sector is in crisis, suffering from government failures in economic management, energy, logistics, and the e-financing. So therefore, we want to hear from themselves, but also this open up our eyes as people who believe in the state. Yes, the private sector will show a lot of negativity in terms of how the government operates. At some point, I know their aims and objectives is to show that the private sector can perform better than the government, but we want to hear from them as they are here today. What is their position on the state-led industrialization program as per their presentation, and also as we are calling for State Bank for MSMEs. Bonabatini on that one. What are they saying? What is their position with regards to that? We are also of the view that the VAT should be redacted. What is their view with regards to the state taking over whatever the responsibilities that they are doing with regards to MSMEs? We also need to note and also push, Chairperson, as this portfolio committee, that the Department of the Small Business should it pull up our socks in terms of skills development, infrastructure stabilization, no remove of red tape. But also we want these presenters to tell us on what is their position with regards to removal of red tape. Chairperson, they say more than 52% of small businesses are in contraction of or at risk of closure. Yes, that one is a problem. And almost 1 in 10 may shut down soon. So it's only a very, very slow pace year growth in terms of small businesses. And also, I wanted to comment on the costs. E-transport, utilities, raw materials, and e-finance costs have increased by over 50%, making the environment unsustainable. And also the sector resilience is very weak. The national SBGI score of 51.8 shows a vulnerable sector with failing strategies, and also the falling cash flow and very low growth expectations. So many businesses won't survive another year because also the way, the model, and how they operate. So over 55% can only survive 12 months or less under the current pressures. And 75% say policy intervention is urgently needed. So these critical also skills gaps are as follows. The businesses report extremely low digital and strategic skills, and nearly 44% don't know where to access e-training. Also, the finances, they are inaccessible. You know, when our people, more especially in the banks, when they are startup and also when they are struggling to their businesses, they can't access e-finance. All businesses cite lack of capital as their biggest barrier, while over 50% struggle to access formal financing due to bureaucracy and the exclusion. And therefore, I just want to hear upon the presenters, Uguti, if they can give us a clear indication on a percentage with regards to Black-owned businesses, more especially those who are small and medium. Uguti, maybe how many are they assisting? Because according to how the MSME is characterized, many people there are many people that are excluded, and also we get to get presentations from the private sector about percentages. Enga indicate ukuthi are these businesses Black-owned, women-owned, people with disability, and so on and so forth. Hence, in the reality of this of the statistics of the department, there is a lack of support towards businesses that are owned by those who live with disability, youth, and women. So, government intervention is for businesses, for ukuthi government intervene is to ease the access to finance and grants, to reduce the red tapes, lower the VAT. As I've asked the presenters to tell us on these principles, Chairperson, so that we hear from their side what exactly is their position with those 4 or 5, I think it's 5 points that I've asked them. Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Matulela. I see members are satisfied. I don't see any other hand. Let me again acknowledge the presentation by Dr. Wade. Though as members would have many things to ask, so that at the end of the day we are certain with ever we, or maybe if ever at the end of the day we'll say we did understand the presentation or we did not. I want to say, as members of Parliament or of the Portfolio Committee of Small Business, we need to know whether the findings reflect the reality of all small businesses, not just those with internet access, or those in certain provinces or industries. The representativeness affects the credibility of the entire index. So how do we know the 1,601 businesses, Doctor, you surveyed truly represent small businesses across all the provinces? I've heard Honorable Kruger say, appreciating the presentation, that it is short, but I was expecting that when you talk to us mentioning these numbers, you'll also tell us as to where you did the survey, whether in one province in this country, Gauteng, for example, or Limpopo. If not, if you did it in the whole country, you will then indicate to us as to where and how many people did you interview. I know that there is no study that is perfect, but as members of the Portfolio Committee, we need to understand the limitations to avoid misinterpreting or overstating the findings. My question here will be that what are the main weaknesses or gaps in your study that as members of the Portfolio Committee should be aware of? The other one, many small business, especially in townships, rural areas, informal sectors, and under-resourced communities have limited access to stable internet and digital tools. Since the survey was conducted online, how did you ensure that township, rural or informal and under-resourced businesses were not left out or mispresented in the results? Or maybe I should ask if ever the survey was done online only, or did you on the other hand, did the physical field work, whereby you were talking to the people physically, mouth to mouth, or were you talking to them only online? I'm saying this because in our rural areas, it's not fashionable for them to have all these gadgets that will end up assisting them. So I also want to check on the issue of the red tape. Small businesses outside major cities face more challenges than the urban firms. We need practical ideas, Doctor. What simple changes that can remove unnecessary delays and make it easier for entrepreneurs to start to operate or expand their businesses? What support programs should be designed differently for informal and township micro enterprises to make these businesses sustainable? I want to know on other challenges again. On your top findings on page 2, I don't know whether it's chapter 2 or page 2, you managed to give us all the findings that you have found that comes as a challenge to the people or those who are dealing with small business development. But I did not see the difficulties whereby they are finding it very difficult to get information, which is one of the problem. They don't know even how to improve their businesses. For example, even if they are funded, these people don't have a means of protecting the thugs from stealing their property. The small business development department will then fund them or buy them goods, but tomorrow you find that all the goods are being stolen. So that is the other challenge that they have. So I don't know if ever maybe I can be assisted on this one. And that was my last one. Over to you with the responses, Dr. Wade.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honourable members. Thank you for those thoughtful questions and for your valuable inputs. I would just like to acknowledge my colleagues also present today, Professor Kubuka, who's already made some comments earlier, and Professor Van Aert. They are both professors at the BMR and they are also involved in the project, so I'm thankful for them also attending today. And I will address the questions, and then they are welcome to also please come in with any further inputs. And then if there are any if there's any follow-on, I could address that on email where relevant if we don't cover everything today. So, Chairperson, honourable members, maybe just to set the scene again around this initiative and the report. And I'd like to start with the last set of questions, which I think are quite important, and I'm glad for those questions around the validity and the size of the survey. So I can mention a few points around that. This is not a census of all businesses. That's not really possible, but it's robust and it's nationally representative. It's a barometer. And it's statistically stress tested that the results are valid and reliable. As I mentioned, we surveyed 1,601 SMMEs, employing 1 to 50 employees. That covers all 9 provinces. And you'll see in the detail in the report, there are some insightful insights around issues in different provinces. So all 9 provinces are covered. We've got 12 business registries where we sample from. We also cover the different sectors of the economy, and as I mentioned, it's stress tested. And on that point, I can mention around different sectors, for example, those based on the results which highlighted poor prospects: agriculture, hunting, forestry and fishing, electricity, gas and water supply. Those were among the sectors highlighting the poorest prospects at this stage, whereas higher prospects were in mining and construction based on the feedback from respondents. Then I can give you a bit more detail around the survey as well. Perhaps I can just pause and ask if my colleagues want to make any additional points around the survey and the validity of the study.
Yes, Chair. Chair, with your permission, yes, we, as Dr. White indicated, we did some diagnostic tests on the sample. As we indicated, it was 1,601 respondents that we got, and we did diagnostic tests on the reliability, validity, and structural integrity tests, all of which came up strong, ensuring and giving us confirmation that the sample was representative in terms of the sectors, the different 9 sectors of the economy, as well as in terms of the provinces, the 9 provinces. What is also important to mention is that the study focused only on those businesses that employ between 1 and 50 employees. So that was the size that we targeted, and all the respondents who were, as indicated earlier, were either owners or managers of these entities were interviewed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Prof. Kibuka. And perhaps I can add another comment just around the limitations then. I think we are clear in the report, as with any research, around the limitations. We mentioned it's a cross-sectional online survey, not a full census, although mobile penetration does help, where respondents are able to complete the survey if they have a cell phone. So anyone with a cell phone, even if it may be in a remote area, if they have coverage, they would have been able to respond on that survey. Then, colleagues, I will move on to further questions. I think there's some overlap around key points, and I will try to best address those in the best economical use of time. Perhaps a key point to make also, which comes out from the questions, there are various questions around the implications and the policy steps. I think the key takeaway for the committee is that this SBGI provides a clear roadmap for where support will have the greatest impact based on what businesses are saying. The exact formulation of interventions within those areas, unfortunately, does not have a simple solution, as policymakers would know, and some of that might involve further deliberation and research and work delving deeper into those issues. But the key issues that we can flag, again, to highlight is this issue around access to affordable financing, reducing administrative and regulatory burdens, stabilizing core infrastructure such as energy and water, and then strengthening skills development pathways. So those are the key issues that we know. And the useful thing from this research is that it will be continued, as we mentioned. There will be a follow-on, there's the follow-on results that will be published, and the plan is to continue this into the future. So over time, developments can be tracked, and in that way, it will be useful for policymaking in terms of seeing, is there movement in specific areas. Then if I can address the different sets of questions. Firstly, there was a question around the report and the tips. I would be happy to share that afterwards with the committee. I can send that on. Then there was another question around the business licensing bill. And I think my feedback here also touches on some of the other questions that relate to policy making, where we need to say that the SBGI does not make recommendations on specific legislation, as that was not our core focus. So the focus and role here is to highlight SME conditions, and Parliament is best positioned to determine where specific legislation will address specific issues, be that through additional research and further deliberation, but that is not the outcome of the report. So we can, yes.
Hello.
Chairperson, you are the one who disrupted the speaker. Just mute.
Oh, my apology. My apology.
No problem, Chairperson. So just to conclude the feedback, there is the BMR can support ongoing monitoring of developments in the SME space through its involvement in this report, and we would be happy to provide subsequent presentations of future reports as well, and to engage with the committee where appropriate and needed. So I think that's then the feedback around the bill. We can mention around the business licensing bill that consideration needs to be given around its potential impact, and that will depend on how it's structured and how it will be implemented. Administrative burden and red tape is a key issue cited by small businesses. So that needs to be considered in terms of the bill and how it will be implemented and what impact it may be, considering administrative load, cost of compliance, and those types of issues. So that does need to be considered. I think that's the key takeaway there, that these points need to be considered within the current environment already, while, as with most policies, there are certain trade-offs, so that would need to be considered. Then a second question was around setting up businesses, factories, and I think the point was around bargaining agreements and labor agreements. Again, that's somewhat outside the scope. That wasn't the core element. Obviously, engaging with survey research, we have to be very focused in terms of getting specific feedback. Again, there was also a question around supplier development. So I think that's a further level of granularity that could be considered potentially as a separate piece of work, but it's outside our scope in terms of the research. But my colleagues are also welcome to come in. I think there was then a comment, rather not a specific question, on skills. I think that is a key takeaway as well around accessing skill and small businesses not being sure where to access the right skills. So that's definitely something for the committee to consider. I'm just taking a look here at the other questions. Here was around questions around market access and the forms and structure of support. I think that is also unfortunately somewhat outside the scope, but it fits the takeaways. Again, it fits these businesses are saying we need support, and how that is delivered and the success of interventions is almost a piece of work on its own, and within various committees to see what the impact is and how best to structure it. I think there was another question around state-led industrialization programs, and that is similarly within the policy-making realm, and unfortunately we cannot comment on policy-making. We can only comment here within the focus of the study. What are the key issues? What are businesses saying, and how is this evolving over time? And are we, in fact, at least another point to make is, are we focusing on the right things? And as some of the members, honourable members mentioned here, there is now some critical information or data to back up, to know that we are talking about the right things. If someone says access to finance, the businesses in the survey all seem to say that is an issue. If we're saying compliance is a concern, that's being echoed by everyone. So, Chairperson, honourable members, I've tried to address as best I can in the time those key areas of question, but as I mentioned, I will be sharing the report and those tips And we would be happy to answer any additional clarification questions or requests for input on email if where necessary, and we will address those as best possible within the scope. Thank you so much, Chairperson and honourable members. Just as a final note, Chairperson, I want to request once all members are satisfied, if we may please be excused after this, as we've got other meeting obligations coming up as well, and I don't want to eat into the next speaker's session as well. Thank you, Chairperson and honourable members.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wade and Mr. Paul. Thank you very much, Professor. And my apology for my disturbance. I was not aware that I did not mute. We really appreciate the work that you've done today, the presentation, and the way you responded to the questions that we had and the comment. You managed to cover everything. I think we need to allow you to go and attend other important programs of your day-to-day. And then we allow Dr. Charles Kemel to take us through on his presentation. Thank you very much. We strongly appreciate. Even tomorrow when you hear a call, you must respond like you did today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honourable members. Have a good day. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, honourable members. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Charles, you're in your hands.
Chairperson, honourable members, thank you very much for giving me the privilege to speak to you today. I think it would be just helpful for you to get 2 minutes of background about me. I have been involved in inclusion initiatives for the last 30 years of my life. I was a senior executive at Standard Bank, leading the personal market of Standard Bank for a very long time, with a particular emphasis on what was then known as driving the mass market strategy. And I was the executive ultimately accountable for the rollout of the e-plan account to the scale that it grew, and for inclusion initiatives in credit in Standard Bank, as well as funeral insurance and other such initiatives. Later on, I was asked by the financial sector industry to lead the charter access initiatives in 2004, and I led the program on Mzansi, the national bank account, which does have some reference to some of the proposals that we would like to make here. And later on, focused my energy on consumer credit, being an executive at African Bank. And since 2014, have emphasized small business development, inclusion as my field of focus. I'm currently the chairperson of SACRA, the South African Credit Risk Reporting Association, which is central also to one of the initiatives that I will mention. I'm here as the principal of a very small advisory business that I've been running for the last 11 or 12 years. And have done also extensive work in the spaces of interest to this portfolio committee. So that is the background of what I want to talk to you today. The emphasis on the presentation today is going to be access to finance particularly, but it does have ramifications to some of the other topics in this space. Inevitably, one needs to specialize, and as the previous presentation has shown, is that it's very difficult to have expertise across the whole complexity of the space for MSME development in the country, but clearly everything is interconnected and there are knock-ons. So I'm going to focus particularly on catalyzing access to finance, but there will be ramifications for the other areas for MSME development. I do need to now work out, I'm not a Zoom expert, how to share the presentation, which I'm not quite sure how to do. Sorry, I should have been more ready for this. I'm used to Teams. Goodness.
Sorry, Charles. Can I request the secretary to assist you?
Or else he could bring the presentation up on his side.
Okay. You can go to share screen down there. There's a...
Yeah, I've got share. Oh, okay, there's share.
Then it must, if you have opened it in your laptop,
yeah,
I've given you the rights.
Hold on here, I think. Oh, goodness. Secretary, do you have a copy of the presentation?
Yes, I do.
It would help me greatly if you could bring it on the screen. Thank you. Okay, while that's being brought on the screen, let me start talking about the content of the presentation. I think the first thing to recognize here is that the ideas that I am presenting here should be thought of as work in progress, and ideas that need to be developed more. Thank you very much. We can go to the next slide. Can be developed more in due course if the ideas here were to be adopted. Can we move the slide? Okay, going to slide 2. I think just moving the mouse might move the pages. Well, on the right, you can go to page 2. There's on the right, there's a arrow.
Can I check with the honorable members, because we received the presentation, we have them in our gadgets. Can we allow the teachers to do the presentation while we are looking on our presentations?
Okay, so then there we are. So right. So the idea here of this presentation is to provide an alternative approach to expediting MSME development in South Africa. It is quite clear from the previous presentation that the sector is under strain and is underperforming. So on the next slide, 2 slides from here, I want to make the point that although economic sentiment in South Africa has turned positive over the last 6 months or so, it is clear that urgent action is required to improve the fundamentals of South African economic performance. And it's also very clear that incremental business as usual change won't get us where we need to be. It's very clear globally that economies have been destabilized by rising US protectionism. Everyone is reevaluating their national economies. There's increased competition for scale and capital. Our South African positioning in BRICS is making us a focus of the administration, and they are, in a sense, punishing us for things they are making up often. In addition to that, technology change is radically altering the environment in which we're operating, and although providing opportunities, also threatening employment and growth in this country. And we've already got a pretty flat economic trajectory, which may be improving slightly, but is clearly not where we need to be. So it's obvious that changing the trajectory of MSMEs in the country would dramatically alter GDP growth and also unemployment alleviation. This slide makes a point that although we think about MSMEs as a continuum, they aren't really a continuum. Small and micro enterprises are often one-man or very small-man small person businesses. They are very constrained in what they do. They're very difficult to run, as the previous presentation showed, and strategies to influence the small part of the MSE market are different from strategies to deal with medium and bigger businesses, which really are small, big businesses, as opposed to the micro and small sector, who are small businesses. So this presentation is going to concentrate attention on initiatives that we believe will radically change the trajectory of small business development in this country. And although later on, very briefly, we'll mention medium businesses, in the main, it's not the focus of what we are talking about here. Next slide. Next one. So in this next slide, what I'm going to do is give a very brief overview of a summary of, I think, how the sector from a particular access to finance works. And then on the slide after that, I'm going to go into a lot of detail of some of those elements. I haven't provided the data, but the data, I think, would be well known to this committee. And in my experience of talking to this, the next slide will be pretty familiar in some ways to you. Let me go back to the previous slide. A summary, previous slide, of the sector. Is how do people experience the sector? There is low capital availability, low skill, high compliance costs, high complexity, and high cash. Now, that generally drives the sector into an environment of high informality. And coming with high informality, there are low levels of bank utilization. It's not that people in the sector are not banked, that many of them are banked. But what you find is that a lot of the usage of what could be usage of the bank is outside the banking products because of the high levels of cash in the sector. Now, as soon as you get low levels of bank utilization, you get low levels of record keeping, and all of that tends to lead to low credit access and high credit prices. Through the lack of capital and credit, you tend to get low scalability, and low scalability tends to lead to low prospects and returns, and that tends to lead to poor sector performance. So that is a sort of map of what tends to go on in the sector as a whole. And as soon as you've got poor sector performance, it becomes an unattractive sector for people to invest money into, and so we get this vicious circle. Next slide. So now, let's just look at the sector at a micro and a big picture level. I mean, it's clear here that we perform unfavorably compared to comparable countries. And that's not only first world countries, very developed countries, it's BRICS countries and the like. Our performance in the sector is low, and progress is actually pretty stagnant. There is some growth, which I'll mention shortly,
but we haven't changed much in the last 10 or 15 years. It's also obvious that the sector's contribution to GDP is around, depending on estimates, call it 35%, and there are debates about unemployment alleviation as to what is the level of unemployment. But what is clear in the sector, whatever the debates, is that there is underemployment throughout this country, and the sector would be the major way to improve the situation. And as I've said before, there have been numerous attempts to improve the sector, but there are systemic barriers to change, and we need a different approach. If you look at the numbers based on the Finmark work, they would say that there's probably around 4 million formal and informal businesses. The formal sector has been pretty static. In the last 4 years, it's grown by about 6% in aggregate. There are probably about 800,000 formal businesses, and call it another 3 million informal businesses. And those ratios are very biased towards currently informal businesses, and we need to think quite carefully whether that is the right configuration for this economy, which in many ways it probably isn't. It's not surprising that there is a poor drift towards formality because of the additional compliance costs and complexity of banking, accounting, tax, record keeping, in a context, an operating context, where there is low education, the ownership of multiple businesses, and very high conversion costs to formalize a business. The fact is that once you've been operating in an informal way and then you need to formalize, there's all sorts of complexity about formalizing, penalties and all that. And so we need to deal with that. Where an entrepreneur engages in this ecosystem, they find it, and this is very important, disjointed and fragmented, complex and distracting. They want to focus on their business, not on the hurdles they have to face. Costly to deal in the sector, and full of non-value-adding red tape, with few compensating benefits to want to formalize, defaulting to a familiar consumer-centric world. So from a financing point of view, what this means is that all these small informal businesses are not treated in any way as businesses. They essentially are treated as consumers. Our legal system identifies individuals as contracting parties or juristic entities. As soon as they are individuals under the National Credit Act, they fall in as consumers, and they are treated as consumers in all respects, which for businesses is entirely inappropriate, even with some of the changes that have been proposed. There's very little incentive to use bank products, given the high levels of cash. And then most small businesses, especially informal ones, then struggle because of this low utilization of the banking system, poor record keeping, and then being forced into this regime which is not suited to them. These same factors that affect access to credit also ultimately affect the price of credit, where the price of credit is very high for the nature of what they're doing, but it is what it is, and it disadvantages them profoundly. So this world is self-limiting and traps MSMEs in a cycle of low growth and little access to credit. And therefore, at a micro level, what you've got is systemic barriers, which we've got to find ways to address. At a macro level, we've got to acknowledge that although there's a will and a want to get involved to some degree in entrepreneurial activity, we've got a very poor culture of entrepreneurship in the country, with high levels of dependency on employments and grants. And also acknowledge that for most people, entrepreneurship in South Africa is unfortunately a last resort. There's a narrow spectrum of people who engage in this, and if we are doing our job in society, we ideally need to broaden the spectrum very significantly. At a macro level, I think we've spoken in the previous session and in other work of this committee that recognizes that red tape is a big deal for these people, and they spend a lot of time trying to overcome regulatory and other bureaucratic hurdles, and there's no enabling environment. We are the worst of 48 OECD countries in an IMF study in product market regulation. So it's a very difficult environment, which is very discouraging of entrepreneurship in the country. Although there's a lot of pressure for change, there seems to be no overarching plan. We focus on siloed, fragmented solutions with long lead times, and I think the long lead times is a big issue because even when we identify initiatives that we need to deal with, they take a very long time to conclude and therefore don't often hit the mark because time has moved on. We tend to confuse effectiveness activity with effectiveness, and there are examples even in the way we are solving the sole proprietor issue with the NCA, and I attended a forum on the Startup Act on Monday, and that started in some way with pressure in 2014, and we're still miles away from an act which probably would not happen if it happens before about 2030. So we take a very long time, and we're very fragmented. There aren't high levels of leadership and orchestration to make our ecosystem simpler. And when there is coordination, what one finds, it's more about how do you manage projects and not about how do we manage the ecosystem and the deep thinking that's required. We've got very limited data. And that needs to improve. And what we don't have is any single enabling mechanism which helps everything operate. So this is background which I would be surprised in some way or another if it's not known to this committee. Next slide. So now, ideally, what I want to do is concentrate on a way forward which may give value to this committee in thinking about what it needs to do. If we are to change the trajectory, we've got to be bold in making changes and reorganize the ecosystem significantly. And fiddling is not a strategy. Down the left-hand column, there are a whole lot of ways suggested about creating impact. And the first thing to do is to build the burning platform. It's quite clear here that amongst a small group of people, this issue is pushed, but nationally, compared to other national priorities, it is very clear that MSME development is not seen as a burning platform, and yet, in some respect, we are shedding people much more than we did with electricity and water. And if we were able to do what we've done often in, for example, improving the electricity situation, we could transform this economy by focusing on it in a very different way. We, I think, should be focusing our mind on how we make entrepreneurship aspirational and inclusive amongst all our people as a core culture of this country, which we are far from at this moment. South Africa, we need to build confidence in the sector, and it's quite clear, even listening to the previous speakers, that in fact we haven't got momentum in the sector. In fact, if anything, momentum is faltering, and what we need to do is build momentum with longer-term plans and promises that really deliver, and that requires a bias for action, urgency, and visible leadership. I think one of the things about the sector is it's full of different ecosystems, and we need to understand the ecosystems and provide visible and accountable public and private sector partnerships that make the sector fly. In some ways, what we might want is a national entrepreneurial convention and a focus of a conversation that is led at the highest levels of our economy, as if we were solving the electricity problems and the port problems, and having some sort of forum made up of the most senior people in government, captains of business, and other parties at the center of it, and then making that the center of accountability for both the public sector and the private sector for initiatives such as the ones I will describe would be a strong recommendation for a way of going forward. In my opinion, our opinion, we are probably doing too much. We're focusing on many initiatives simultaneously, and in that respect, possibly, we should be focusing on a very small number, and you'll see in what follows, I talk about examples of the big six. There isn't a silver bullet, but unless we focus on a small number of big things that can change the trajectory, in our opinion, we will not succeed. We need to think deeply and widely, and we need to be much more selective and elevate. We need a rallying initiative. Ideally, we need a single enabling mechanism that acts as a simplifying rally call for MSMEs to operate in, and we will talk about that on the next page. But when we solve problems, we need to think about solving them together, simultaneously, and not individually. And in this case, in these proposals, find a way to enhance registration. Our legal structure is all built around businesses having a juristic entity, yet, although it's not hard to do, the consequences of doing it are difficult. So what is being proposed is a mechanism to automatically register in SIPSI and SARS, to fix the NCA, National Credit Act limitations, reduce tax disincentives, and also drive cash into the banking system. And if we can manage to find an initiative that could do those things simultaneously for a large number of businesses, that would potentially change the architecture of how they're operating. Also, we don't have national databases. There are various initiatives, one of which I'll talk about here, but we've got to acknowledge that measurement matters. And as indicated in the previous discussion, we actually are always worrying about getting a handle on what actually is going on, and having a national database for small businesses that could come in part out of the work proposed would be very helpful to us. Next slide. On the next slide, what we've looked at here is a 2 to 3 year plan to create a platform that unifies and integrates the ecosystem, simplifies complexity, de-risks and standardize and reduce costs of operation, and generates excitement and incentives in the current and prospective, for current and prospective MSMEs. The plan operates around 3 headings of unify and integrate the ecosystem, align regulation and standardize and de-risk, and then embrace, excite, and incentivize. The 2 main initiatives to unify, I want to take a step back here because I hadn't expected when I started this work to land up here, yet I did, is in 2004, we in this country ran an Mzansi initiative for inclusion of unbanked people in South Africa. This initiative started, call it, in 1 year, and in the following year produced what was known as Mzansi, and Mzansi over the next 3 years included this is documented, 6 to 7 million people into the banking system, and eventually the Mzansi brand went away and the people were absorbed in the banks. But the initiative was essentially to design a national bank account at that time, which would have features that would be attractive to the unbanked at the time, and would be suited to the particular task at hand. And was very, very successful and done very quickly with the support of 4 of the big banks and the Post Bank at the time. What is being proposed here is to, in one form or another, and there's different forms this could take, launch an integrated, attractive, and unifying national business package, which was aimed at access and an end-to-end streamlined solution to encourage MSMEs to enter the formal economy, that would keep the journey of entry simple, and open doors to finance, potentially markets and support. The idea, which I'll elaborate later, on what could be in this, could be either through a process of standards, but it would definitely require a partnership between the private sector, including banks and probably the mobile networks, and government in respect of integrating simplicity into SIPSI, into the tax system and the like, with certain characteristics. So that would be proposal number 1. It would be pretty revolutionary for the country. And if we can get the support of the banks, which won't be simple, but with the works of the likes of government and this committee, is obviously possible, given that we've already had an example through Mzansi. The second initiative here, which has begun, it's in the SACRA world, is the implementation of a data sharing initiative amongst all credit providers to businesses in the country. This can probably make a lot of headway in the next 2 or 3 years. This committee, I think, has heard about it in respect of submissions from the banks. It is not simple to implement, and it is one of the things that strong encouragement of all players in the ecosystem to make this happen is very, very important, because there is no doubt that data sharing, if you think about the consumer world, South Africa is one of the most advanced data sharing environments in the world. And if we hadn't had it, our consumer economy would be a much smaller consumer economy, and is made possible to some degree by the current bureau network we have and the data availability, both for credit access in the consumer market and for competitiveness in the price of credit. And what we are trying to do here is to emulate that in the business sector. And there is no doubt that if we make the data much more available to all sectors who are involved in the financing of businesses, it opens up a whole host of opportunities and makes data much more available for risk management and access purposes, and could change a fortune in this economy. But it does need investment. It does need support from the whole ecosystem. And let me say this, that the banks certainly can't deliver this on its own. It needs the bureau movement and other players to be available in the movement. And it's very important that we think about the whole ecosystem that will enable this in a broader way. So that is potentially a discussion. We obviously do need to deal with this red tape question. We've got to we've got to reduce red tape for sure, make compliance effortless, and there are a whole lot of combined initiatives which, if we focus on, standardize and make it easier, and we can do this by choosing certain elements like making the FICA process simpler and quicker, possibly thinking about how the grant process would work, particularly as whether there aren't opportunities for business grants rather than people not wanting to lose their grants and so holding on to them and so on. And then what is also being proposed here is a simple credit insurance and risk sharing scheme which financing businesses can opt into via the data availability that would become available via the SACRA initiative, the BizCRE initiative, and therein lies an opportunity which I think we are not exploring sufficiently, possibly through a private sector public partnership, to deal with this credit insurance, and is a way of reducing the cost of credit for parties who work within a simple credit insurance system that we need to explore. Point number 5 as emphasis is to draw capital and skills into the sector through a streamlined credit and capital incentive schemes. And I think it must be clear that to the extent that we have the right incentives, particularly for capital in the sector, there's plenty room to draw angel investors into the sector, and that may offer ways of really unifying and integrating the BEE world, where people with capital and skills join together with people who, with mainly Black people and people who maybe are disabled, women, youth, and integrate into a very different environment for this country. And finally, an initiative that is much more focused on the culture of the country, where we spread the message that becoming an entrepreneur is a way to grow your own wealth, grow your own opportunities, and that needs a program of marketing and work that we need to do in this country. So it is the belief that by focusing on 6 initiatives here to be spelled out in a bigger way, in 3 or 4 years, we could change the trajectory of small business in this country, and we would have changed a lot for a lot of people. Next slide. The next slide shows that these 6 initiatives are all integrated. And if we are able to do all of these, we would have an ecosystem of initiatives that would have a profound impact. We can look at the interactions in due course, but it's just to make the point here that they all work on each other collectively to change, particularly access to finance, but with that, so much more. Next slide. The national bank account that is being proposed here would have a toolkit in it for ensuring that it's highly attractive, seamless and integrated, and unifying. So what one would want to do is have clear benefits. Ideally here, it would use some of the existing approaches to automate tax collection, based, for example, on the turnover that goes into the bank account. There would be no cash-in charges, because what one is trying to do is attract cash into the bank account. It would have very low or no compliance costs. There's some discussion needed of whether it even needs to be taxable, because the fiscus here for businesses below 5 million probably do not earn that much from it. But in any event, it would automate a whole lot of features and would take a lot of the compliance costs away as a burden from the MSMEs and would automate what happens. There would be seamless integration into SIPC and SARS. So, for example, once you take the bank account, there would be an automation of registration that would be being proposed, and it would deal with for big issues around record keeping, because automatically, once you were in the bank account, the records would be integrated in and would be available. So that is a concept. The further part of the concept would be to bring in the mobile networks and to provide data availability as part of the bank account. Quite clearly, if there were such a thing as a national bank account, it would create a centralized forum for access to e-learning, other skills and digitization and potentially AI capability. And so it could become a central unifying element in this space for a good number of years. And in due course, if it vanished, that wouldn't matter because we would change the national architecture through it. On the right-hand side, there's examples of what could be there, who it could be made up from, and what the add-ons could be. But it is believed that this type of vehicle, through a public-private partnership, could change the architecture very significantly in the country. Next slide. Okay, clearly, there would a lot that would need to be validated, and what is being proposed on these 6 initiatives would be a validation process where clearly we would need to convince ourselves that the users would benefit in the way that we think they would. Government would have to, at least in principle, be willing to indicate that they would be willing to participate. The banks and the mobile networks would need to be persuaded and indicate they would be willing to participate. And nationally, we would be require a high level steerco between government and the private sector, and maybe such a thing could come out of a convention at a national level to grow this economy through entrepreneurship. Next slide. One set of comments on medium-sized enterprise. Next slide. This is not where we're going to dwell on, but I indicated at the beginning that the work that has been done in the B20 and other financial initiatives, and I've put here China as an example, where we need different levels of collaboration between big business and medium-sized business with funding for MSMEs that arise out of that type of initiative would be very important. And there is work that has been done as part of the B20 work in this regard, and we would need to follow through on that. Next slide. So in short, what is being proposed here is, next slide, 2 slides down. What is being proposed here is a national initiative that at all levels of this economy would change South Africa as a whole, both as a destination. Sorry, can we move 2 slides down? Change South Africa as a destination point for investment in the country. It would drive a much more inclusive, nationally competitive, self-sufficient economy. It would position the country as the most investable economy in Africa. We would be using our South African human skills base to the fullest, while also attracting new skills. We would get what we desire: GDP growth, employment growth, tax revenue. We would get our database coming out of this initiative, and we would get cash reduction in the economy. So thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing with this. That is the basis of what I wish to present to this committee, and thank you for the opportunity in allowing it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles, and thank you for allowing us to invite you. Honorable members, there is a presentation. Can I see by a show of hand? To those who want to interrogate the presentation and ask questions or give comments. Dr. Kruka, you're the first one, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you for the presentation, Mr.
Temo.
I hope I pronounce your surname correct. Sometimes my English run out of data, so it's that Wednesday again in my life. But thank you for the presentation. As I say, very informative. When we talk about small business, the small business ecosystem, there's two things to my mind, and that hinders small business to be successful, and that is red tape, number one, and then the ease of doing business, and there's a lot of academics that feel that the two is the same, and it's not the same. There's different definitions for each of them, red tape and ease of doing business. So we need a framework from the private sectors so that we can eliminate red tape and push for the ease of doing business for SMMEs or MSMEs. So, but the problem in South Africa now is that the private sector is very fragmented, right? Because when it comes to solutions, there's a billion ideas there in the private sectors how to fix our ecosystem of MSMEs. But most solution, and unfortunately, Chair, and that's where the problem starts, is that the solutions that come up from private sector, instead of be loyal to small enterprises, they are loyal to the benefit of their own pockets. So, and that's where the fragmentation comes when we look at solutions for small businesses. Like in the previous presentations, like in my previous comments, whatever is presented to us, it's there already, and we talk as a committee every single Wednesday around that. And we see that when we on the ground doing oversight and speak to our very, very, very small businesses and informal businesses. So what I'm trying to say, Madam Chair, is that this fragmented, solution-driven private sector is not good. It's not good for the greater. We talk about the greater good, and what we need is a whole society approach to fix our small business ecosystem, because as we heard from the first presentation, the small business sector is in big, big, big trouble. And we need a whole society approach where we can put down a framework agreed by private sector, by politicians, by government, so that we can start working on solutions and not just, whatever we look at. So, because if we don't come out with a framework of solutions that's agreed by politicians, private sector, and government, I'm afraid, Madam Chair, our MSMEs will stay in ICU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kruka. Honorable Carol Mafagane.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good morning, honorable members. Thank you, Mr. Charles, for the presentation. I've got a few questions to ask. Allow me, Chair, not to put my video up. Number one, to Mr. Charles, thank you for the presentation. My name is Carol I'm a member of this committee. I'm representing Umkhonto weSizwe Party. My first question to you is, the AI, artificial intelligence, is a major disruptive force with a pervasive influence across all sectors of society, and opportunities for innovation, efficiency, and new career paths abound. However, this shift also brings significant challenges, including job displacement and ethical concerns that require proactive adoption. How should our department, or us as a committee, and the MSME sector prepare ourselves for the tsunami? Are we likely to see the MSME sector collapsing or evaporating even further? Or are we about to experience a boom? The second question is, what are the key obstacles to the development of a national business package you are referring to in your presentation? The third question is, the government is already pressing the banks to lend more to the MSMEs. They say buskri is important. Is there more we should be doing beside perhaps the National Credit Act regulations and the MSME and the cooperative fund policy? And my last question will be, you say partnering between the private sector and the government is key in the MSME ecosystem to achieve success. What are the obstacles? Give an example, because as a committee, we are very keen to see the private sector coming on board. It has been said in many platforms that the private sector is hoarding cash because the government is failing to create a conducive environment for investment. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the answers.
Thank you, Honorable Karen. Honorable Matulelo. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Once again, this is Honorable Babalo Matulelo, deployed by the Economic Freedom Fighters in this portfolio committee. We thank you for a response for the report, Mr. Charles. But also we do have concerns, Chairperson. As earlier on, I've indicated that it's worrisome, and also I'm like, yes, these are the realities that they are talking about, but also when they are doing the research and are giving us the reports, seemingly it's like there's an agenda they are pushing towards making the private sector to shine and as compare it with the government, a failing government. Because when I listen to the responses from the previous presenters, instead of them telling us their position, because I asked them the clear position on what are their position in terms of the overall research they did. Because when you come here as a researcher or as a doctor or as a professor, we are taking your report as it is, but also we want to see your own observations and your own positions as the researchers, to say, why are you not giving also the possible, if ever you are given a chance to answer on such questions with regards to state entities, state to do away with privatization. So therefore, the report, we see it, but also we are very, very, very concerned the way these reports are, because also the communities out there, entrepreneurs out there, in our communities that are watching this or that are with us live every time when we are here. They get the negativity of the departments and the government, but also they do not get from the presenters' point of view their position towards changing the current situation that we are getting as per their reports. Chairperson, this presentation provides an alternative approach to accelerating the development of micro, small, and medium enterprises in South Africa. Its central argument is that the MSMEs sector is stagnant, fragmented, and unable to meaningfully contribute to the economic growth of job creation in its current form. Okay, well and fine that we always raise these issues, but also, Chairperson, note my opening to say, I'm very worried with the way it is, these reports and all the responses with regards to what we are facing currently. The presenter calls for bold changes, integration of the ecosystem, and he focused to 2 to 3 years national strategy to shift the trajectory of MSMEs development. And the below is a structured summary of the whole thing. That is, when you combine both presentations, you get to see how we are put, because also it must be clear that all these failures and all these gaps between the private sector and the government, they are also intentionally created so that we all, as I have mentioned, the example of the load shedding, that is intentionally done so that people will see that private sector performs better than the government. You know, a simple, typical example. Now people, they have got problems with network coverage, Chairperson, because of the arrival of AMA fibers. And these fibers, they are not coming with a solution or with proper kind of covering also those who can't afford e-fiber. Everyone is affected until you pay for e-fiber to be connected in your household. How can you better say that fiber is working better than the previous network, while the poor masses now, they are no longer able to connect to their cell phones and they cannot afford the fiber connections? This is very, very worrisome because you know, this private sector, they only care about their profits only. I think there must be something, Chairperson, that we can do as this portfolio committee, and the government must wake up, because these things seems like they are coming with better solutions, but only to find out good. Even these AI things, our poor communities, they are not even affording their touchscreen phones. How is it benefiting the poor masses? Those who are having their informal businesses in their townships and in rural areas, who have abasasebenzisa otilili, ibasizangani AI, because they don't afford. Each and every cent they are collecting in their businesses is for them to buy stock, not to buy smartphones. So therefore, Chairperson, also I just want to give a clarity that we might be happy with their presentations, but also we must be worried. We must be worried how their presentations are, and we must check deep what is it that makes them to come without giving a proper solutions, more especially those of nationalization, Chairperson. So the presentation begins by highlighting the global economic instability, rising protectionism, and South Africa's weak growth environment, with high unemployment, fiscal pressure, and slow SMMEs expansion, the current business as usual approach is deemed inadequate. So this is our So, Chairperson, you see how risky it is. If I was the one that is in charge of the government, I was going to stop completely. The private sector must be operating, especially not in the spaces, because the same private sector is the one now that is taking over the informal business. We've been complaining here that Abo Spa, no Pick and Pay, Abo ShopRite. But they are selling is Dick Sweets, R1 items, 1 apple, 1 banana. While outside their shops, there are tables of our poor informal traders as the for his big businesses. They pay for storage, but also their businesses they are under the attack of the same private sector. We must also deal with the causes, the root causes of what it makes us to reflect as we are today. We're not going to be happy and allow the presentations of such kind if ever they are not coming with proper, legit. Because we must know. We must also explain what makes these entrepreneurs to be in the state that they are reporting to us as we speak today. So the presenter argues that the MSME development in South Africa is lagging behind peer countries with low levels of formal business growth and very limited scaling of small enterprises. Okay. Then what is to be done? What are their resolutions towards that? So the document stresses that MSMEs are not a single homogeneous category. Therefore, we find ourselves, when we are saying we develop small, medium, and micro businesses, we also find ourselves in a corner where a same Rupert has got USPA as a big shop, but also has got USPA as a medium business where they take those sharks to the communities. Or you save Abo Banbani.
Round up. You are more than 10 minutes now. Round up, ma.
Or are we working according to time?
Yes, I said 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. The presentation outlines a cycle of stagnation. Page 6, no, page 7, Chairperson. So there's a lot that is happening, and I'm not happy. Yes, we do want to hear the research and everything, but also when we ask them about their position and also their inputs on what should be done to avoid these reports according to what they've given us. We want them to tell us their side of the story. We are not going to run away from being part of BRICS. We are working according to those lines as the country. And we can't be painting everything as negative and we don't come with proper solutions. When I wrap up, Chairperson, the presenter is arguing about that the South Africa can dramatically change the SMME landscape within 2 or 3 years if the ecosystem is simplified, integrated, and backed by a few high-impact interventions led jointly by government and the private sector. You know, the private sector, I feel very, 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 very angry about it because it's not here to assist our entrepreneurs. Thank you, Chairperson. I hope we will have another session where they come back again because of the time constraints. I've got a lot to say about what is happening today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Matulelo. Honorable Molotsan, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning, Chairperson. Good morning to honorable members. And let me also welcome the presentation that has just been done. Chairperson, the I think I have a few questions. Just want to check with the presenter. Given that South Africa has a poor culture of entrepreneurship with high dependency on employment and grants, and that starting a business is often seen as a last resort due to bureaucratic hurdles, how can participation in entrepreneurship be broadened and the environment made more enabling for business creation and growth? My second question, Chairperson, when credit is limited or expensive, especially for informal businesses, it becomes difficult for MSMEs to scale them in a cycle of low growth and restricted access to finance. What strategies or policies intervention can be implemented to address these systematic barriers and create sufficient incentives for entrepreneurs of all backgrounds to invest and grow in the sector? Let me thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Molotsane. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation as well. Chair, I just have very short input, and that is leading on from what the Honorable Kruger said. Chair, red tape encompasses a very broad area, and the presentation sets out a lot of information about what needs to be done and where we are in terms of the small and micro business sector in South Africa. And there are some things that we all know. This is being reaffirmed by the study and the research that has been presented to us. But we all know that we do not have an SME sector that is thriving in South Africa. We know that we are lagging behind our peers. If we look at our own economic growth and the unemployment figures that we have in South Africa, that's there for everybody to see. However, what I would actually appreciate is that, you know, whilst we may all have our own ideas about whether we want to nationalize things or not, we must also take into account that what has worked elsewhere, why it has worked, and what policies have failed. And we need to support initiatives, whether that's our viewpoint or not, but we have to support initiatives that are backed by evidence. And what we have here is evidence being given to us, as was given to us in the earlier presentation as well. So the one thing that I would like to see in a lot more detail is just set out what it is. You know, we make reference to the ease of doing business. We make reference to regulatory hurdles, inflexible labor legislation, which cannot work in the small and micro business sector, red tape. But just put it down. Just tell us what you want removed, what legislation you want changed, what actually needs to happen. Because sometimes just coaxing it in, maybe vague is not the right word to use, but telling us to do that, I don't think people actually get the point here. And then there are hundreds of studies and talk shops and workshops. And every day that goes past, we could be doing something to change the situation. It is now urgent. So just be a lot more direct about what you want. If you want to reduce the tax disincentives, tell us what exactly it is that you want. Do you want VAT thresholds to be increased, or the exemption of VAT limits to be increased? Labor hurdles, what it is. Do you want the removal of bargaining council extension agreements or not, for smaller businesses? What exactly is it that you want? And I think just to put it a lot more directly in terms of what needs to change, That's what I would like to see as more direct input that's coming through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ma. The Honorable Malimacha, over to you, sir. I think you're the last one.
Thank you very much. Pass my warm revolutionary greetings to Mr. Charles, members of Portfolio on the platform, South Africa at large. Mr. Charles, when you start, you made a very bold statement to say tinkering is not a strategy. And I want to align myself with that caution. That if indeed we need to repair what has been damaged for too long, which in this case it will be the exclusion of black majorities in the economy of the country, we will need what your father said, urgent action is required. And when you were dealing with that, I sum up that you installed a proper, well-considered pastel in dealing with a presentation, which I appreciate, because it was able to zoom exactly to international the conflicts, the tariffs, which you never mentioned, and I'm adding on that, the climate change. You said all this. You attempted to go to one of the points which I want you to, when you deal with it today and for forever, because it's something that is becoming a narrative of some sort, that exempting a business person from paying tax is a strategy to assist that method to grow. As if we don't know that in the long run, the state itself depends on tax to run all these services. So I want you to forever have this, can be for today's argument or forever, as opposed to the suggestion will be exempted to pay tax for a certain period so that you go and gain strength, come and be back in the game. You will agree with me, Mr. Charles, that this entrepreneur by nature, we start them, nurture them, grow them, and they must grow, graduate to be a private sector participant. Remember, when we start you from the street, the objective is that we must become Motsepe. As an example, Motsepe is a private sector and is doing very well, and you must go there. Reason being that not all of us, we can depend on the government to get jobs. So we want a sustainable private sector that can be effective. So those that are saying the government is applying reluctancy on that, and I want to align myself with them, that maybe at some stage we don't understand what we want to produce in the long run. In the long run, we are saying the government cannot accommodate everybody, but we will need a private sector. But this private sector must be the one that is sustainable and being effective to assist, starting from the government and the community at large. Now, Honorable Matsulo zoomed in to say, given that South Africa has a poor culture of entrepreneurship with high dependency on employment, that is exactly where I am. Then she further says, how can participate in entrepreneur be broadened? Exactly what I'm saying. And the environment made more enabled for business creation and growth. Mr. Charles, if you remember that speaker who came from there. And I further said, despite growing pressure for a change, the MSMEs ecosystem remain fragmented with solid solution. long lead times, and limited high-level leadership or coordination. How can the ecosystem be simplified to improve accessibility for entrepreneurs and ensure that intervention achieve meaningful results rather than being purely administrative? Ms. Singh was not far from here, and other participants, that as much as we want to shine with their poor, their sufferings, at some stage we need a tangible solution to the whole matter. And this must be the way that they see themselves, not necessarily about from mouth, from this to mouth. It must be from here to growth. And the ultimate must be that they become a permanent private sector that is recognized, and that can, now, the issue of tax, when I mentioned, that can be in a global market. You can't be in a global market, then you are exempted from tax. Therefore, if we build a business exempting them from tax, so we are creating a narrative, if not a presidency of some sort, that they only exist if they are not complying. And it is a problem. So if you are to build a permanent structure, if not an institution, it must be that lead by example, and that is compliance. With no high-level platform in the government or the private sector to drive SMEs into transformation, limited data to track performance, and no clear enabling mechanism for business operate easily, how can the ecosystem be more transparent, accountable, and supportive for MSEs? You see, the MSMEs to be more supported from the policy point of view. One will say, these researchers, these surveys, let them ensure that every direction that we are given, it is understood by them, and they be able to set objectives. Because if it is not understood by them and they are not driving this from their own passion, we are going to put a lot of money that is not going to assist us. Thank you so much. As I enjoyed your presentation, Mr. Charles. Thank you, the chair, and everybody on the platform.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malamacha. Thanks for the presentation. For the questions that we're asking. Dr. Charles, on slide 7, you are saying the presentation says we lack strong leadership on MSME reform. I want you to explain what kind of leadership structure do we need to change this? Because under the contributory problems, you continue to say there is a little high-level leadership. And then at the end of the sentence, you say, where there is coordination, it is about timelines and project management and not thought leadership. Now, this makes me to wonder because we have the department, we have the institutions that are playing a role of leadership, especially in spaces that were ignored in the past by those who were leading during apartheid. I want you to tell me, what is it that you mean exactly? We had a problem during 2009, and this problem was resolved with regard to 2008 financial crisis. It shows that we have leadership. We also have problems during COVID-19. Now, it is a history when we think about COVID-19. And this shows that we do have leadership. So I want you to tell me, what do you mean exactly on what you're telling us? And then again, when we continue, you are saying, we often hear about the problems of small business face in South Africa. I want you to give me an example where things are actually working or helping micro and small businesses, even with all the challenges. I think I agree with Honorable Matulelwa What we need to do, honorable members, is to invite State South Africa to conduct a regular survey on small businesses. We don't want to leave the responsibility to the private sectors only. I think we understand today, after this presentation, that we will need to invite them. The Secretariat need to assist us. And on the presentation, says on China, big firms depend on SMEs for flexibility and cost advantages, but face risk from disruption. In South Africa, however, many small businesses feel that they are being bullied by larger firms. Honorable Matulela has said a mouthful when it comes to this one. I cannot really repeat what she has said. But then I would want to know, how would this apply in small African, given our environment? On that note, I would request that the or Mr. Charles really respond to what the honorable members were raising. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a lot that's been said here. Let me deal with some of it, possibly to start by saying, excuse me, that there ought to be no competition between the private sector and government. What I am trying to say here is that a very strong partnership between what the private sector can do and what government can do will be the essence of making what is required to happen to happen. It's not one or the other that can do it on their own. What government can do, the private sector can't do. What the private sector can do, government can't do.
Are we losing Dr. Charles? Mr. Kamel, are we losing you?
The person, it seems like it. I can't see anybody, hear anybody. I can hear you though. So I think the politicians is still on board.
I see the others, but I cannot hear Dr. Charles. But he's here in the platform and the mic is open, but I can't hear him. Honorable members, can you hear Dr. Charles?
No, Chairperson,
Yes,
we can't hear him.
We can't, Chair. We have lost even him in the screen.
Oh, okay. Secretary, please assist us, locate him. King, can you hear us? Hello?
Yes, Chairperson, that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Chairperson is saying has been he had a power failure, but is trying to log on the phone.
Okay, okay.
Are you winning?
I'm just got to download. Unfortunately, I don't use Zoom. I'll be about a minute or so. It's just got to download that. I will win.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Did you hear, Chair?
I did. I hear that he will win.
Yeah, so I was saying because he has to download the Zoom. He's using most of the time the Teams. So that is why it's trying to download and then try to log in.
Okay, maybe you should allocate him some minutes. If he's not winning, we have another meetings after this one. I don't know whether we will say we invite
Recording
him.
stopped.
This one does not need responses in writing. We need to hear from him.
Hi, can you hear me?
Recording in progress.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. There's been a power failure in my house all morning, so I've finally in the last minute run out of power. So I don't know, can I continue or not?
Yeah, but continue. We're waiting for you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I think the point, just to summarize, is that we've got to find a way between the private sector and government to work much more closely together as partners in this environment. Now, Madam Chair, if one thinks, for example, about the electricity crisis in South Africa, the way that we handled that crisis was we pulled together all the parties at quite a centralized level, and the president and the minister of electricity, together with Busa and whoever else, and senior executives in the private sector, focused very explicitly on what needed to be done and pulled all resources because in reality we were dealing with a national emergency. In my opinion here, we have got a number of people, groups of people in government, in the private sector, working in a very fragmented way in trying to pull together this problem. But it doesn't have the level of intensity of what, if we thought about it as a national crisis, we could muster as South Africans to sort out and make real progress on this issue. If one looks, for example, at initiatives that have been followed, what happens is that you've got the Department of Small Business who are doing their best. You've got National Treasury who are doing their best. They've got DTI who are doing their best. But when it actually comes to how do we drive initiatives and priorities so that we deliver, it does not have the emphasis of what is really a national emergency. And similarly, when you pull together the banks, when you pull together the networks, again, we have got a very fragmented way of doing something. So one of the proposals that are being made here is to put together a process in this way, almost suggesting around something like a national convention for the topic, and to make sure that there are regular, accountable meetings where projects are well defined, where people are called to account, accountabilities are clear, and where integration is needed between government and the private sector, it is driven in a very urgent way. So, for example, what is being suggested here is this national business package idea. Now, what that would require is a very strong steering committee that is made up of senior executives of the bank banks, of the networks, of members of government, which would, for example, include potentially Treasury and the like, and that the exact activities that need to be defined would be defined, and timeframes would be delivered to modify maybe parts of the tax regulations, certainly what banks would need to do and what the timescales were, so that we were working collectively to an outcome which was well defined and along timelines that were well understood. So that is the construct of what I'm saying here is strong leadership is required. We need integrated outcomes, and to do that, we need the representatives of each of the key participants to be accountable for delivery, and it becomes visible. Let me, Madam Chair, also deal with one of the comments made with regard to tax. Nobody is suggesting that groups of businesses don't pay tax or exempt from tax. The fact of the matter is many small businesses are not making enough money to actually pay tax or pay very much tax. And part of this work would need to define what actually does the fiscus get from the small businesses, because it is a very small part of our tax collection, almost certainly. And the idea here, of course, is to grow businesses, to enable business growth in such a way that they become very meaningful contributors to the fiscus, because through scale and through size, we would grow this economy and grow the tax contribution that people would pay. So it must be very clear here that to the extent that we enable a much slicker, smoother, less red tape system through, for example, a national business program where tax, to the extent it's required, is automatically collected, as in a way the current, what was 1 million of revenue would have a tax threshold. The idea would be that tax would be, if required, collected through the national business package and would not be yet another overhead for entrepreneurs and small businesses to have to concern themselves, because collections would be automated. So the whole idea here is to put together an integrated mechanism that takes away a lot of the labor and the pain that small businesses, that discourage small businesses from participating. And by taking it away, making sure then that this package, for example, is attractive, and that would enable people to come more into the system than want to stay out. The whole essence of these proposals are to make credit more available to all people in the ecosystem, obviously to black people in the ecosystem, both more available, more accessible, and at a lower price than what is currently possible by virtue of, for example, the BizCree initiative, where the data is now shared amongst many participants, and that enables competition to take place, and via competition you get more access and you get lower pricing in the credit, which can only be positive for small businesses. So the proposal here is around 6 urgent and doable initiatives which can have an effect of mobilizing, certainly via the financial part of what small businesses need to do, opportunities for small business in a relatively short time frame. And by building more available capital access, and also supplementing it by programs which show that being an entrepreneur is a recipe for success and an opportunity to grow wealth for those businesses and improving the country in terms of what the country achieves, it goes a long way in solving some of the problems. It's not a silver bullet for all the problems, but the proposal certainly would create momentum in the sector, which would change the dynamics in the sector. And that then would have a whole lot of knock-ons, which have to be good for the people involved, for black people in the country, for transforming this country in a way that it needs to transform. So, Madam Chair, that is the argument here, and it's an argument that, in our belief, we need to explore to see whether it can get broader support.
Thank you very much, Tate Kamel. Thank you for the responses. I think...
Chair?
Yes. Who is speaking?
Is Honorable Babala Matulela, Chair.
Okay. I was going to request that maybe because now we are running out of time, I was going to request that we request our secretariat to invite Mr. Charles Chairman again to come to our committee, unless if you are going to speak for 2 minutes, Honorable Matulela.
Please, my chair, I won't even go to the second minute. No, it's just a chairperson, a follow-up to Mr. Charles. Also, you indicated, but he ignored your questions with regards to who is the leadership that is failing. But also, I just wanted to zoom in the revenue collection and the contribution of small businesses. That is painted that they are not contributing a lot. But for bigger businesses to be operational and contribute a lot to a fiscus is because of these small and informal traders that always go and stock in their businesses. That is why we always say the VAT and the VAT must go down for small businesses, because for them, they can operate without small businesses. The last one, Chairperson, Mr. Charles is indicating that a relationship must be strengthened between private sector and government. But the strengthening of relationship, it doesn't reflect or it doesn't answer the questions about the same private sector that is taking over the private sector. Ngalama spaza shops that they are taking to our communities, Abo You Save and all about Pick and Pay and Abo Spa. So we want a clarity on that one, because the relationship of the government and the private sector will never resolve the deliberate decision by the bigger businesses to take over the informal trading space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Charles, 1 minute.
I think that what is important here is that revenue policy is clearly a domain of government, and how we integrate the appropriate revenue instruments into, for example, a national business package would be a discussion between the revenue part of government and the banks, and with regard to how to structure the national banking business product. And I think the key argument is whatever solution is reached can be executed very efficiently through a national business package without it being a handicap to small business to have to manage the records and have an accountant and whatever. And what we are looking here for is an instrument. The extent of tax collection from various parts of the economy would have to be a decision ultimately of the Treasury.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, we are running out of time. I don't know if ever there's one other member who is having a pressing question, whereby I can also allocate 2 minutes. Thank you very much. Take us to the program, Secretary. Thank you very much, Dr. Charles.
Thank you for hearing me out. It's been a pleasure presenting to you all.
Okay, thanks. We appreciate. Actually, we are now on the last agenda, which deals with closing remarks and adjournment. I think the members of the Secretariat Committee, they see a need that we need time with the HRs. If ever next time, maybe we can get an opportunity to also interact with him. Like, for example, when we were asking questions, we just picking here and there. We did not go deeper into all the questions because of the time. I would request that if ever is doable, please make sure that next time you invite him again. So
thank you very much.
On that note, I would want to say to the honorable members who managed to attend the meeting, thank you very much and God bless you. The meeting is adjourned. Go and have your lunch, and the next meeting or plenary is waiting for you guys. Thank you. All the best. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Recording stopped.